Hey everyone, I hope you're having a wonderful Wednesday.
Hump day.
You are here with Justin and Josue, the two hosts of the Motivating Force podcast. We're going to bring you some chill Wednesday vibes. This week, we are going to be having our mini-series on a segment that we titled Falling Off the Edge of the Earth, where we're going to take some concepts that are a little bit out there. We're going to push them out a little bit further. We're going to jump off the edge of the earth with them, dive down some deep rabbit holes, and we hope you guys can explore that with us.
It's going to be some good old-fashioned, lighthearted fun. So a quick disclaimer for everybody. We ask that you all leave your biases, your religious preferences at the door.
And just generally, anything that might make you feel offended, leave it at the door.
We're going to have some good old fun. None of this is our personal belief. It's just some fun conversation between the two of us.
Yeah. You do need to get out there and explore things that other people do believe.
And especially with this topic, there's so many different theories. So we're just going to talk about a couple of them.
And what is this week's topic?
So this week's topic, we're talking about the origin of human consciousness.
Quite a crazy concept. There's a lot of different things out there. To start off, we have some more simpler ones that I can think of called, God came on the scene, kind of snapped his fingers, and within 7 days we have everything that we know of.
Right. Super fast.
Super fast, super cool, right? If you really think about that, like, there is a greater being out there that can just come on the scene and make literally more than what humans can comprehend happen.
Yeah.
Just like it's nothing. So human consciousness just came as a byproduct of God being like, yeah, that's cool. They need to have this done. Right. And it's interesting to think about because if we go back, 500 years ago when we had no idea what germs were, and now today we know a lot about germs. So to think about an omniscient being that came on the scene, created everything we know, and we're still just scratching the surface on getting deeper into what all that is, right?
Yeah. So is what you're saying right now, in time, we're going to be able to understand that creation aspect or that creation theory? Because you said how he created all this and we don't understand it.
Right.
Like it's beyond comprehension. But using the example of germs and how now we understand germs in just 500 years, you think in a couple thousand million years or whatever, we'll get to the point that we can fully grasp how that was created?
I'm not entirely sure. I think we will come closer to like narrowing down our options with it, right?
Yeah.
Because with science, I do feel like with every question that gets answered, right, for every one answer to a solution, we ask 3 more questions.
Yeah.
So we get closer to a general idea of what's going on, but we just realize that there's more to it that we don't know. Yeah, I guess in a way, maybe not a full comprehension like, oh, God did this because, we've made this little micro universe in our world, mm-hmm. and we realized that we had control over all this stuff, and we made, I don't know, right now, I guess in our time period, a great example would be like, we made this algae colony and got it to feed off of a specific thing and forced it to do that, and look, it evolved and grew into this.
Yeah.
So that would bring us closer to some type of comprehension of God actually being able to do what he did.
But
maybe not the full answer.
But it'll also be a conflict in the two different communities because you have your religious community and then you have your scientific community. Those tend to butt heads even when it goes back to like the Renaissance, I believe.
I mean, those have butted heads for all of time.
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying. So because we'll be able to understand it, we're not going to get to a point where we can tell people in a church, hey, this is what happened, because I guess, is it the phrasing we use that's going to sound off to them when we say things like evolution or things have evolved, that they're going to go, no, it was created like this and has always been like that? Because I know for us, we've gone to private schools that happen to be Christian private schools. So we were raised against the thought of evolution, but now going to a public college and university, we've also had influence on the evolution theories, and we're able to see possibilities in both.
Yeah, but that's the point to bring up, though, right? Is like from the Christian private schooling perspective was like to say even the word evolution was like you need to watch what you're talking about. And then in college, it's the same way. As soon as you say anything about God or spirituality, it's you need to watch what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Right? You see it. I mean, there's movies on that, right? We talk about the movie Expelled, where it's literally that in the scientific community, people wanted to expand more on exactly this, the human consciousness, but involve God with it, right? Involve values, things that we cannot measure, because it just kind of made sense to some scientists to do that. And the whole science community was like, you're out.
Right.
You no longer can practice science in this aspect, and you'd have no say in anything, and all of your work will be discredited because you have a different opinion than where we're all headed. But we can see that both ways, which is what really sucks. Because if you go back in time, when the Catholics took over, you had those same exact issues. You want to talk about science too much, man, that could get you freaking excommunicated.
Yeah.
You know, it puts you out on the streets. We couldn't ever come together with spirituality to say, right? Because that covers everything, that any type of religion that's out there. We can't put that spirituality together with science. We make it seem like they're not compatible. But if you're really open to the idea of it and the concepts of it, there's really a lot of connections.
Yeah. And like I told you before, even in astronomy classes and stuff, since we've had that exposure to both sides of the fence here, I've looked at astronomy and things like that with the lens of how can I make sense of this plus the religious explanation of things. That's a little different than the point we're trying to have in this conversation. So let's have fun and talk about the missing link. What do you think the missing link is? Or what caused the missing link in the change from cavemen to the society we have now?
Okay. So to talk about this massive jump from
monkey people.
Yeah, right? Caveman, monkey people to who we are today. There was a really great documentary that I watched back in the day, and I don't remember anything about it except for this one point. And they said that the way we should be looking at the missing link is the same way how we look at ice, okay? If ice is at 28 degrees, or if ice is at 0 degrees, it's still ice.
Yeah. When it's at
but
32.
If it's at 32, we start seeing changes. And at 33, we can completely melt ice. Okay? So the idea was we look at evolution as this slow marching progress in whatever aspects, right?
Yeah.
But what happens with that slow moving progress is you're at 28 degrees, you're at 29 degrees, you get up to 32 degrees, there's no noticeable change. As soon as you hit that 32, 33 degree mark, you start seeing some really big changes. So this is where we can see a big issue with finding the missing link, because in theories of evolution, I mean, they want to put the Earth back to some like cartoonish number of being
14 million years.
Yeah. Something like that, right?
Billion?
Hundreds of millions, billions of years. A crazy astronomical number.
Yeah,
right?
I think it's like 14.6 billion or something. I am not sure. Go on. Onward.
Point being, if we want to talk about this billions of years and we need to rummage through the paperwork of billions of years of evolution, you're not going to see progress leading up to the missing link. There's just going to be a moment in time where the missing link happened.
Yeah. Okay. I see what you're saying. It's going to be like finding a needle in a haystack.
Right. And whatever that could be, you know, one theory that I found interesting when we talk about doing that, and if we use that ice analogy, well, instead of just moving the ice out of the freezer into the fridge, why don't we take that piece of ice out of the freezer and throw it into a fire?
Okay.
So this theory, which was very interesting to me, was the Stoned Ape Theory.
Okay.
And this was, you know, our ancestry, if you want to go back to, you know, cavemen. Neanderthals came across plants, right? They would eat plants and animals, as we do today.
Yeah. Hunter-gatherers.
And they came across forms of psychedelics.
Like shrooms?
Shrooms, especially. Okay. And they would consume these psychedelics, and it would expand their minds. So now we talk about that ice cube being thrown into a fire. Now their chemical balance is changing.
Yeah.
And they develop and create a consciousness.
From their trips.
From their trips,
From
right.
their drug trips. They see these beings, or do you even think it forms a sense of like a deity? It brings some form of deity, which then starts the society or the structure in their society?
Oh, definitely. Like we could see major changes, and especially the way that Stoned Ape Theory goes, we see major changes into the creation of society, like with Neanderthals, with tribes growing, with the idea of consciousness expanding. And some examples that we could see today, because obviously we can't go back those millions of years, some of the examples today is the study on psychedelics that we have now.
Yeah.
Right? People are taking psychedelics, and even scientists that consume psychedelics do talk about the experiences as being religious, because they do create such a strong interpretation of things in your mind that you're like, wow, it just opens you up to this whole new frequency of the world that you've never seen before. So if we want to talk about that happening to Neanderthals for 500 or 5,000 years,
they have
what is that going to create?
Yeah, they have no thought of what to expect even going into that. Whereas now society talks about it so much, we have a general idea of where that trip will take us if we were to consume psychedelics. But being a Neanderthal, you're just kind of living day to day, hunting for food, eating. Then you get hit with a blast from shrooms. It's going to take you somewhere that is mind blowing.
Yeah. And just a really quick thinking about it now. So when we talk about psychedelics, we can also talk about the experiences people have on DMT,
which is dimethyltryptamine.
Right. And it's a chemical that's found in organic creatures, anything.
Yeah, right.
And some of the theories that come from that is that when you die, your brain releases a lot of DMT.
And that's essentially that white light.
And it gives you that feeling of living for eternity, even though in reality it could have been minutes.
Yeah.
So maybe DMT is something that, if you want to go far back into the history of developing human consciousness from an evolutionary standpoint, maybe they were consuming something that had DMT in it, right?
Okay.
And that could have also led to developing that human consciousness.
True.
Because what better way to progress than to kind of be alive for 10,000 years mentally, right?
Yeah. When I heard of the Stoned Ape Theory at first, I would also hear people relate it to how mushrooms or fungi in general, they communicate with each other, and how there would be fungi that would live in this one part of a forest, and when predators or creatures just start eating off of it, they communicate downwind. And I don't know if it's like from releasing some sort of pheromone or chemical in the air, that the other fungi of the same species will start changing. They'll start evolving differently so that the predators that were eating their brethren won't eat them. So when you think Stoned Ape Theory, these Neanderthals, when they start consuming these things, the same property in the chemical evolution moves into their brains and their brain chemistry, so that now they start changing. The cavemen, they start thinking, how can we change and develop so then it's not just hunting, gathering, and now it's forming society and protecting families and growing into what we know as human beings now.
Exactly. And this can go into our Monday episode, right? Because we talked about superego, ego, and id. So right. Id, if you want to put it that way, could be that far back instinctual caveman feelings that we have, right? The immediate gratifications. And then that superego could be what was formed off of accidental consumption of chemicals, right?
Yeah.
And a question I would kind of pose your way is that if you did feel like this were to be true, right? Just to think that way, whatever it was the caveman was eating, like you said, that evolutionary process, things don't want to be eaten.
Yes.
So whatever they consumed in quantity like that to get us to where we are today, that plant
is probably different now.
And it's probably really poisonous to humans. It's something that we cannot consume today.
Yeah, because it's evolved to not be eaten. I see what you're saying.
So do you feel like that would be true? Do you think that we don't have that plant anymore if this theory would be correct?
I mean, I'm sure we don't have a lot of plants now that we had before, but it does make sense, right? Because like you're saying, it doesn't want to be eaten, so it's going to change drastically.
Right.
So what could have, or it could have just lost those chemical properties. I've also listened to interviews where people do research on how ancient Romans and Greeks used to spike their wines with different spices or like thyme, cinnamon, stuff like that. And how the theory is that that could have taken it from just being drunk to a psychedelic experience. So maybe the things that they spiked their wine with had those psychedelic and chemical properties, but now have lost it. So it's still the same plant or still the same spice, but it just doesn't have the same effect. So it's changed that way and we still have it. It's just not working the same.
So instead of strengthening to a point of toxicity, it just decided, hey, I'm going to just completely get rid of this because humans go freaking nuts for it.
Yeah. It's like, let's use the example of like weed. Let's say it starts seeing, like the plant starts realizing that people are going crazy for weed, marijuana. It's going to start changing its chemical biology and stop producing THC or CBD, and people are going to stop going towards it because they're not getting high. And then that's going to prolong its life.
Yeah, it's going to allow the plant to flourish out in the wild.
Yeah, so then
thousands are going to overlook it.
Thousands of years from now, people are just going to look at weed as another plant and not something that that people would partake in to get high.
Right. That makes sense. So how do you feel about the start of human consciousness?
All right, so let's talk about aliens.
Okay.
Oh, this is where it gets fun, right? All right, so aliens.
So now we're getting off of this earth. Got it.
Yeah. Because there's also theories of the ancient astronaut theory, which is we had extraterrestrial intervention in the creation of what we know as human beings. I love space. I love hearing about ETs. So I was heavily pulled into this direction. Again, this isn't personal belief, but it's stuff that we're interested in. So we learned about it and we're talking about it.
Did our research.
So there's super far-fetched theories where aliens came to this planet thousands and millions of years ago, saw that there were monkey-type creatures walking around that were able to do...
Just like basic functions or something?
Yeah, basic functions, like we can pick things up, we can put it down, we can climb up a tree, we can dig. The theory is that those extraterrestrials were so far advanced, but their planet was losing, let's say, for equivalent, what we call an ozone layer.
Okay.
And then their sun was pretty much destroying their planet. So then they came over here, changed human beings to form some kind of consciousness so that we can be their slaves, right? So then we're farming for them on this earth gold, right? Because we're a gold-rich planet. We're farming gold for them so then they can throw it out into their atmosphere to create that ozone layer. But then once we gave them enough, they moved on and we were left with just human beings.
And a deep fascination for gold.
Exactly, because gold, if you really think about it, it's not strong. It's not a strong metal. It's malleable. It's not the prettiest metal.
But it would be good for something like an ozone layer.
Yeah, but it's also crazy because I think it was in 2012, scientists, when they were conflicted with what to do about our ozone layer issue, that we're having like a hole in the ozone, there were theories that went out to, hey, maybe we should put some reflective metal or substance into the atmosphere to reflect the rays from our sun. And that sounds just like the ancient astronaut theory.
Okay.
That they were losing that ozone layer, so then they kind of wanted to throw something up there. And our scientists now in 2012 are saying, let's throw gold up into the atmosphere.
Right. Oh, so this is kind of how, because I'm not too familiar with this theory. That sounds exactly like what I was saying about the algae, right? Like maybe we can get to that point where we take algae and give it things to do specific tasks, right?
Yeah.
So it's that same concept where they saw us and they were just like, okay. Well, instead of us just extracting the gold, let's inject some of this really common stuff we have today called consciousness, because this is now a substance to us or some craziness, something that we don't understand, and injected it into apes, and then we developed into humans, and we had this whole process.
Yeah, I think it was like cross gene therapy, where they would basically make alien Neanderthal hybrids, and that's why there's such a drastic difference in cavemen and human being bone structure and the way we walked. Like, it wasn't like a slouch to a fully upright posture.
Right.
It was drastic.
And to say that real quick, interesting thing with gold too. This is why being a car guy, McLaren. Originally, they were a straight up just race car company, did Formula One racing, right? And he was known to be crazy and doing things that no matter the cost, just to win at Formula racing. When you talk about global warming and heat dissipation to protect from UV, what McLaren did that nobody else did was he actually created a thin layer of gold inside the engine bay on the Formula One cars to help insulate and disperse that heat from the engine to keep his motor cooler. And it was like super known, super proven to have worked very successfully for him. But nobody else would do it because he used some ridiculous like $50,000 worth of gold just to make his car a little bit more efficient.
Yeah. But again, that's like the super far-fetched, like ancient civilization came here from another planet kind of thing. But when you take the basics of it, you know, cross genetics, some kind of advanced science that we don't understand now, whereas we're getting to the point where our science is advancing 10 years at a time, 5 years at a time, drastically. I think it's possible that we could have something like that, you know, further down the line, like what Elon Musk is doing, the whole neural net.
Yeah. Trying to make leaps in progress here. But that's how you do it, right? That's what I think about when I think about that ice cube. We just need those drastic leaps, make those big differences, and then that's when those changes occur. They just seem small in the grand scheme of time. But it's interesting thinking of that theory of us kind of being slaves to that, because number one, I think of the Rick and Morty cartoon where his car is literally powered by a universe, and that's exactly what he did, was make people step on a thing to create power for his car.
Yeah, and then that universe. Yeah, that universe is powered by another universe.
Yeah, and it's just like this downward chain of never ending. But to go back to that theory, that's interesting because I've studied, like I said, I'm not too familiar with that exact theory.
Yeah.
I do study a little bit more heavily on the religious concepts of things, right? Things that we see in the Bible.
Yeah.
And how we might misconstrue some things, right? Because we don't know everything.
Yeah, of course.
And we can only describe things to things that are relatable to us.
Yes.
And we see multiple instances of that in the Bible, especially in Revelations, where we talk about birds falling out of the sky at the end of time.
Yeah.
And that is now theorized to be like, well, why would birds fall out? And they were like, in today's time, that's planes. Because how could you explain planes to somebody in 100 BC or 100 AD? It's a bird. That's it.
The only thing that's able to fly would be birds.
So when we see that, we do some studying on Nephilims, which is pretty much a crossbreed between humans and angels.
Yeah.
And same type of concept where if religion was really at the forefront back in the day, these ETs, we would consider them to be angels or gods, right?
Yeah.
And the compelling evidence towards that is that not only is that found in Christianity, but other European cultures and religions back in the day, especially when we talk about different theologies, where if you look at the origins of a lot of them, they all have a lot of things in common.
Yeah.
When you look at Greek mythology, they talk about these like flashes of lights and these great things happening in the West.
Mm-hmm.
And then if you go west and you look at some of their origin things and mythologies, they talk about these same type of influences and powers coming from the East.
Mm-hmm.
When we compare all these mythologies and we overlap them, we can actually create an image of some type of extraterrestrial intervention.
Yeah. And like you said with the Greek mythology, there's Olympus, the castle or the super high peak of civilization in the sky.
Yeah.
So you can relate that to a mothership. You also have your beings that are taller than normal human beings, because Zeus and like that whole family up there were perceived as giants.
Yeah.
You have
you also have people like Medusa, also seen in the Bible as the longest living person.
Yeah.
And then that again ties into the Nephilim theory of, well, if we have these types of interventions and they create these drastic improvements in humans in general, it wouldn't be uncommon that this type of mixture would make somebody live to be 600 years old, because the aliens live to be 1,000 and we live to be 100. So you get close to the middle of that, say 600, right?
Yeah.
And just to throw random numbers out there, but like that's the concept.
But I like what you said too about like how human beings relate to what we know in the time that we're finding out about certain things. Because if you look back into older paintings where people would just look at a scene and paint it to what they know, you have paintings and portrayals of what an angel looks like, and it's usually a person with wings. And that's where, like you said, where we would relate it to a bird when it's something that can fly. So you look at an angel, and if you really think about it, you're seeing a person come down from the heavens or just from the clouds. It's flying. How do you put that into a painting? You just put wings on it.
Right, right. And they might not have wings at all.
Yep.
Yeah.
Could just be a humanoid that's coming down, and you're like, I need to say that this person flew to me or it was floating. So you just put wings on it so that it's not just a guy standing on a cloud. Or you even have paintings like that.
Very true.
The Sistine Chapel, you have them chilling in the clouds.
Yeah, and you're not actually sitting on a cloud. I mean, I would doubt that aliens would actually,
Yeah, but...
Or angels even, right?
But the presence of them in the clouds. Or you have, I want to say like Indian gods, like Shiva and all them. They have stories of chariots in the sky that are shooting fire down from above. We have fighter pilots in the military that are in chariots shooting fire, raining down literal fire.
Yeah, and even as like jet propulsion, right? There's fire coming out of the back of it to propel it forward.
There you go.
Yeah.
But it's crazy because, like you're saying, all of this gets lost in translation. It gets so many different languages try to explain the same thing. It's going to have a little bit of tweaking here and there. But a lot of it, the root sounds pretty similar. Like the root of the religion or the root of the theory, they all sound alike.
Right. And it's just to that different perception.
Yeah.
But that's why we're going to see where, like you said, I know we're going to get closer to understanding the perception of, and especially the origins of humans, first of all, and the human consciousness, right?
Yeah.
Two really big changes. The physical change, the mental change. So... Whereas right now we could be just way off because of perception.
Yeah.
And then in the future, is that going to be way off because of perception, or is it going to be closer to the answer?
That's the struggle we're going through.
Yeah.
Because what you're describing as a Nephilim or an angel, I can just change.
You relate that stronger to aliens.
Yeah, but all that is just me making a different noise with my voice box.
Yeah.
We're talking about the same thing, essentially.
Right.
But now we have two different ideas of what we're talking about when it's the one thing. But it's the understanding fully what that one thing is. It's trippy.
Yeah. Yeah, it is, man. And it's crazy when you see evidence that backs up all these different types of theories, because there are so many parts of it that just make total sense for any theory.
Yeah.
And it's like when we study those mythologies and religions and we can overlap them and create that picture. Who knows, like in the future, we don't get to that point where we overlap these theories and these perceptions, and that's what brings us closer to the real picture.
The reverse Tower of Babel is what you're saying.
Yeah.
But also, I want to bring up that disclaimer again. We don't believe these things to be so true. We're just having fun for everybody listening. We know we're going to have the people that are so hard-pressed, like, it's only God and God did this.
Or it's only science.
Or it's only science.
This. There's nothing spiritual.
Yeah. This whole segment, we're just having fun. We're having that light break from stressful week.
Yeah.
This is just fun conversation.
But
expand your mind a little bit.
I'll tell you what on that too. Forgive me for not knowing the name of the person who gave this quote, but it's a quote that sticks with me, especially when I battle people with this, because putting what you just said of people who might get offended by some of the things on here, whether it's religious or it's scientific, I see this in my day-to-day when we talk about politics.
Yeah.
Right? And not to get too far off subject, I'm going to be quick.
Yeah.
But somebody will say something, say about Biden, and I'll be like, oh, well, that's an interesting point. And then I'll immediately have somebody be like, oh, so you agree with it? What? I said it's an interesting point. There's things to be discovered there because it's not all black and white.
Yeah.
There's things in the middle that make sense. And it's the same thing when Trump does something and I'm just like, well, okay, well, that's a cool concept. I'll get the same reaction. Oh, so you must agree with Trump. Or, oh, it's just, it's so ridiculous, and we should always be in the middle because that's where the most reason's going to be when you put all these things together, and you need to be able to think about it. And the quote that really stuck with me and made me aspire to be that way and to see the light on both ends of any spectrum, politics just being the easy example, is if you cannot defend
both sides
of the story, then you do not know enough about the situation to have a valid argument in the first place. And it rang so true to me because, like I said, politics being the easy example, right? It's a hot commodity these days.
Yeah.
And it's tearing people apart. And it's over the stupidest things like that. It's like literally people will not talk to me because I said one good thing about Trump. And people won't talk to me because I said one good thing about Biden. And it's like, but does that really mean that I wholeheartedly support them and believe in this? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Everything out there makes sense. You have to find that middle ground. And it's great to go out there. And especially if it's something you disagree with, you should know why you disagree with it. Get out there, do the research. If you're super religious, do the research on some of these scientific things. If anything, just to have fun.
Yep, I completely agree with that. And if you're super everything about science and evolution, look into religion. Doesn't have to be Christianity. Look into any form of look into any form of religion. Just have the view from the other side of the road.
You're going to learn so much. It's going to make you a better person.
Yeah.
It will.
Just have fun with it.
We here at The Motivating Force hope you have a great Wednesday. And whether you're a Nephilim or a stoned ape, stay strong, stay motivated, and keep an open mind. Continue to learn from others. The only thing you'll be doing is opening up the door for more opportunities. So thank you for listening. Please let us know if you guys are enjoying the separation of our segments. If these Mondays and Wednesdays are working out great for you, we'd love to hear that. We'd love to hear your theories on the origin of human consciousness. It's always a fun topic to explore. You can always send us those comments on Facebook at The Motivating Force. You can also send them over on our Instagram at podcasttmf. And of course, you can always leave those comments right here on YouTube. And while you're here, make sure you hit that bell icon and subscribe to our channel. We hope you guys have a great rest of the week. Now go on and get